Hi ladies and gentlemen, it's April 11th still. Put my sunglasses on. It's overcast, but it's kind of bright looking that way, so I hope you'll pardon me. All you out there who know what the term button up means, after you do your Met T and you're getting ready to move, or get ready for the onslaught or whatever from the other side, you button up. It sure looks like it's time with what's going on. A little bit more every day, and I think you know what I mean by that. I just see some real bad stuff here, and I hate to be an alarmist and a harbinger of bad news, and hopefully I'm wrong, but when you do your estimate in the situation and you see all the different attacks, the different angles and the envelopments and the concentration of forces. If any of you know what I'm talking about there, and probably some of you do, it's looking like it. After I told you about this whole thing with North Korea and the provocation by the US military, and it's all bankster run, using that term, and I think that's just the best definition for it really at this point. But it's like I said before, you look at this Patriot Act and it's not patriotic, and you look at the Affordable Health Care Act and it's not affordable. Well, now they've got this thing called the Public Safety and Second Amendment Rights Protection Act. What does that mean? It means it's not going to do either one. It's not going to be for public safety, and it's not going to protect the Second Amendment or your rights to it. So that's what I say. This thing is starting to get really, really bad. This thing with North Korea, of course, is troublesome. I can't see how the establishment can let this be the trigger at this point, because I don't think they're entirely ready. But of course, they've kept a lot of this from our eyes and ears anyway. So who knows? They're probably a lot further along than we think. You remember in Star Wars, they thought that the Death Star wasn't quite ready yet. They thought that it was still under construction. And then the Emperor said, no, this is a fully functional battle station, and everybody thought it was still under construction. That might be the case here. I'm starting to see some indications of that. So if you understand what the term button up means, I think it's time, ladies and gentlemen, that we button up. If you can get out, do it now. Get your family and friends around you. Maybe we don't have as much time. Hopefully so, but the signs are looking pretty grievous right now. I'm a little worried. I wanted to bring up this Dr. Carson thing. You remember he was the one that spoke at the National Prayer Breakfast? Well, he went to speak at Johns Hopkins School of Medicine, and the students don't want him to speak because of his statements against same-sex marriage. Like I said, Dr. Carson's obviously a good man. Now, I think this points out the degenerate level of the United States at this point. I'd love to say give everybody, understanding and all of that, but let me point something out to you, Scripture. There are people out there that hate the Bible, and of course you should know me by now that I don't put 100% stock in it, but there are a couple things that are real important. Well, more than a couple things. I look at principles more than the story itself. I think the principles that it teaches are what's important, not whether this event was necessarily historical or not, although that lends credence, of course, to the story. But there's this thing with Sodom and Gomorrah. I mentioned it earlier. Now, I'm just going to be upfront with you guys. Hopefully most of you are adults if you're not, but I'm going to tell you my experience, okay? I'll be honest, with every gay man that I've had experience with, and this is an old saying, but it has been true in my situation, they thought that the only difference between me being gay and straight was a six-pack of beer, okay? That's what they think. And yes, I have been accosted many times in my life by homosexual men. First time when I was a very young boy, okay, and I'm not going to go into details. Then again, by a social worker. You hear people in CPS on my homeless video. We're talking to a girl who talks about the abuses at CPS. That's a fact, and I was a victim of that. A social worker actually took me to a hotel and tried to get me done there. Okay, I fought him back. I broke his arm. That should make you happy. And I wasn't that old. I was about 12. Several other incidents happened as I was growing up. My friends know about that. My point is that maybe lesbians aren't, aggressive. Some of them I'm sure are, but almost all of these of the gay men that are on the the manly side are. I've had, well, even if they're not. Why do I bring that up? Because I want to tell you something that happened in the Bible, and you remember this when I tell you. Remember, Lot was in Sodom and Gomorrah, and Abraham had already talked to the three, God and two other entities, and said that he's going to go destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, and Abraham had talked him down to not destroying it for 10's sake. Remember that? Okay, that's important. Okay, so he gets to Sodom and Gomorrah. They hide not their sin, like Isaiah says. They're like Sodom and Gomorrah. They hide it not. So in Sodom and Gomorrah, they didn't hide it. And what happens is these angels come into Sodom and Gomorrah. Remember? And the men of that city see the angels, and they start trying to get them. They see them going into Lot's house, and they're surrounding Lot's house, and they say, hey, send those men out here. We want them. And Lot realizes what's going on. He says, he tries to push his daughters outside and say, hey, take my daughters. Don't touch these men. That's a bad idea. Well, you know what? It was that point that those angels knew that there weren't even 10 righteous people in that city. Okay? That Lot would have to force his daughters outside. And of course the men didn't take the daughters, they aren't interested in that. They want those fine looking, men angels. That's what they want. You see, and that really is how this is going. Look at Napalitano. I think everybody knows now that the sexual deviation that's been going on at the upper levels of Homeland Security. We heard about all those guys who were, trying to escape from the upper echelons of Homeland Security because of the nasty women at the top. Napalitano is a very good example of what hardcore homosexuals are like. They're predatory, much more so than heterosexuals. Okay, because they have such a smaller group to prey upon that they've got to be more aggressive. Do you see that? So, Napalitano, you're a piece of shit. All right, everything you do is a piece of shit, and I know who you are, and you are. An agent of the eugenicists and of the New World Order. It's no doubt about it. By your actions, by your fruits will you know them, and we know you. You're an evil demon. Okay. War, you get diversion from the financial problem, looking at these wars around. Look what's happening here locally. The Bitcoin collapse, that was probably engineered. That happened in the last couple of days, and I didn't get into Bitcoin. I just couldn't bring myself to do it. I have concerns more about food and water and that kind of thing. But they're taking out any other possible way of existing. The IRS, like I said earlier this morning, they want to go into your emails. This whole thing is coming down at once. Everything about personal liberty, every possible way of slicing and dicing and destroying and burning up the Constitution. This is a full onslaught attack. And that's why I say I think something's imminent. And I've been saying that for a couple of months, but timing is everything. So I don't know. I would button up at this point if you can. Okay, wanted to talk a little bit more about that Melissa Harris Perry. She's trying to use the Bible to apologize or say, the evil people are coming on me or whatever. Hey, she's the one that said the state was the entity or the establishment that should take care of your kids, that your parenting isn't as important as the community. That's old talk. They present this stuff like it's something new, and it isn't. It's the old degeneracy, okay? It's not the way it was set up by God. It's not the way it was set up by nature, and this is baloney. And yet they still, push this stuff off on us. So anyway, if you'd like to see her, go onto YouTube, type in MSNBC host Melissa Harris Perry, and you'll see where she says all your kids belong to us, basically is what she's saying. No matter how she tries to twist out of it, that's what she's saying. Okay, Yakima, Washington, if I did mention that before, the Hanford nuclear waste site is leaking, and now they're saying that they're at risk, quote, at risk of hydrogen gas explosions releasing radioactive materials. They spend $2 billion annually just trying to clean that place up there in Yakima. Why do I bring that up? What is the benefit of nuclear energy? We've had more destruction under that in the few years it's been around than we did for forever under carbon fuels. You know, especially the clean burning coal, which they're trying to shut down. How is nuclear energy better for our use? It might be good for powering stuff in space or whatever, or maybe even nuclear submarines or that kind of thing. But nuclear power, it's been more trouble than it's worth, and it's dangerous. It's killing us. You know what Einstein said about it? He said it's a dangerous way to boil water. And he's exactly right, of course. Heard today that the government now is planning on spending $50,074 per household. Do you realize that that exceeds the median income level? In other words, most people don't even make $50,000 a year, and yet the government's spending over $50,000 a year per household now with their runaway spending. Okay, this is really important, I think, because this equation that North Korea and Iran are building these arms that I mentioned earlier, you know, and that they're teaming up against us. Do you remember the lie about Al-Qaeda in Iraq and Saddam Hussein? Oh, you know, Saddam Hussein is training Al-Qaeda in Iraq. They're always fusing. I mean, you know, Al-Qaeda with the Sunni Iraq isn't going to work. Okay, it wasn't going to work. It was basically Iraq was a separatist country. The Ba'athist Party was running. You know, Al-Qaeda wasn't allied with that, but because Westerners don't understand that, especially these people in the United States, you know, our lying government fused those two together to make it sound like that they were together, and they never were. Al-Qaeda came in there afterwards, and like in Syria, they were probably brought in by the CIA. Anyway, so equating North Korea and Iran is hokum. Okay. Also, don't forget that it was Donald Rumsfeld. We mentioned that the United States assisted in giving North Korea nuclear technology back in the 90s. That was Donald Rumsfeld and the Swiss company ABB working together. And of course, Clinton gave them the missile technology. So, you know, and we just conveniently forget about that. Okay. In WikiLeaks, you know, this new release is really showing a lot of the problems that we have in our government here in the United States and the people that actually run it. Kissinger was found to say, the illegal we do now, the unconstitutional later, which is now, okay? He said that, you know, many, many years ago. Okay, here's a crazy thing, and this shows you where it's really going. The Missouri Highway Patrol gave the feds, particularly the Social Security Administration, a list of weapons permit holders in Missouri. And they didn't do it just once, they did it twice. So somebody from the federal government, probably from the Social Security Administration, called in and said, we want a list of all your concealed carry holders. And what did they do? They gave it to them. And there's no federal registry. Oh, no, of course not. No. Those lying bastards, you know. It just never stops. One of the senators there in Missouri said this, we know two things. His name is Schaaf, I think, S-H-A-A-F. We know two things. One, the federal government wants lists of concealed carry holders. Also, we know the DPS, the Missouri DPS, is actively and purposely concealing the information from us, that they're giving this stuff to the feds. It just never stops. And by the way, it's illegal to give that information to anybody. Okay. I'm not sure what I wrote there. I couldn't read my own writing. Okay, we'll come over here and finish up on this. One of the Italian ministers is accusing the Bilderberg Group. If you don't know what the Bilderberg Group is, you really need to look into that. They're part of the Club of Rome, and the NWO and all those things that you hear about, the CFR, all that is controlled by these super mega rich. So the Italians are accusing the Bilderbergers of terrorist attacks in Italy, and I've talked a little bit about that before, the Red Brigades and the bombing of the airport there in Rome, those kinds of things. Okay, killing just innocent people. Why? So that they can blame it on their opposition. When NATO was, Operation Gladio and all that, when they were trying to oust people that didn't want, the Western influence there. The disturbing thing is that WikiLeaks shows, and okay, is this propaganda? Is this disinformation? I don't think so. They're saying that the United States Special Forces were involved in those bombings, and it's mentioned in officers' training manuals in Special Forces about how to stage false flags. So I wouldn't doubt it. Not that all Special Forces people are bad. I'm sure there are people that say, no, I'm not going to do that. But of course, you should know that there are a lot that would. Today, we're not using so many military guys to do these false flags. We're using paid mercenaries, the old Blackwater type. Okay, I know for a fact that the CIA recruits corporate and sometimes just single contractors to carry out these things. Okay, no, they don't even. Well, they probably know who they are, but there's no way you'd ever find out. Okay, sort of like what you see in the movie about the hitman that nobody really ever sees. Yeah, they do actually do that, and they do it against you, and they're going to do more of that. Okay, I think I've said about everything. I wish I could read what my little handwriting says here. I guess I brought it up with the mercenaries. If you remember Abu Ghraib, you'll know that the American military can torture. And also that what came out in those investigations was that they tortured little children in front of their parents. And they think that we're the good guys. Some more information came out about this, but they burned them with acid, and they raped them with objects in front of their parents to get them to talk. We're not the good guys, ladies and gentlemen. We haven't been for a long time, because we don't abide by our code of ethics, our morals, that we had many years ago, constitutional issues. Okay, well, I'm sorry that this ran a little over. Button up. I think it's time. Button up. Keep as many of your important electrical appliances turned off as you can, maybe even unplugged over the next little while until this North Korean thing blows over. If you're not using it and it's not, keeping food, frozen or something like that, unplug it. Try not to, usually it's going to be affected. Something like a car is going to be affected if you're running it, and I'm talking about, if this satellite actually does have a nuclear device on it from North Korea and they use it for an EMP. So just unplug anything that you're not using. You could get a Faraday box over stuff, but it's too late for that. Most of you wouldn't even know how to do it. So the easiest thing to do is just not to use stuff. Now I do know that there are devices that have power in them, but usually you're not going to have problems with battery powered things. It's stuff that's hooked into the grid. Okay, that's really what you're going to have. Or like car engines or airplane engines that are up in the pulse when it goes off. Those types of things. All right. Okay. One more time. Button up.